Our next set of problems asks us to factor. And remember, we spent a whole day going over the GCF and how to factor out a GCF. And so these should not be terribly complicated as long as we're careful and make sure we do, in fact, find the greatest common factor. And so now looking at problem 7, I see 12x minus 15. I don't have an x in both of my terms, so I cannot factor out an x. But I do have two terms that are divisible by 3. So I can factor out a 3, put it on the left side of my parentheses, and then ask myself, how many times does 3 go into 12x? 3 goes into 12 4 times, and it keeps the x. Now, how many times does 3 go into negative 15? That would be negative 5. 3 times negative 5 is, in fact, negative 15. Now we can check our answer. 3 times 4x is 12x. 3 times negative 5 is 15x. Nobody should really miss any of the problems on factoring, because even if you're struggling with identifying the GCF to be able to factor, you should be able to take your final set of problems and distribute to get your original problem and know that you have correctly factored. Number 8, 5x minus 8. Well, here we don't have a common value number that goes into both 5 and 8 other than 1. And there's really no purpose in factoring out a 1 because that doesn't get us anywhere. But we do have an x in both terms. So I can simply factor out x. So x times 5 minus 8, because I pulled a x out of both terms. And now again, let's check our answer. X times 5 is 5x. X times negative 8 is negative 8x. That was a successful factor. Number 9, 14xy plus 35y. Well, I see that we have a y in both terms, so I know I can factor out a y. There is not an x in both terms, so I cannot factor out an x. And then I have two numbers, 14 and 35. My common GCF would be 7, because 7 goes into 14 evenly, and it also goes into 35 evenly. So 7y is my greatest common factor for these two terms. If I divide 14xy by 7y, my y's will cancel each other out. I don't have an x, so I will still be left with an x inside the parentheses. And then 7 goes into 14 2 times. Now for my second term, 7 goes into 35 5 times. The y's will cancel each other out. So I would simply be left with 7y times the sum of 2x plus 5. Number 10, 6x minus 10y plus 18z. Well, now we have 3 different variables, which means I cannot factor out any one of those variables. But I can recognize that all 3 of my coefficients are even numbers. And since they're even numbers, they'll be easily factorable by 2. So I want to check to see if there's a greater common factor. And it would have to be 2, 4, or 6. And 6 goes into 18, but it doesn't go into 10. So it can't be that. 4 doesn't go into either of those additional numbers. It doesn't even really go into 6. So we're stuck with 2 being our greatest common factor. So 2 goes into 6x. Well, it goes into 6 3 times, keep the x. Goes into 10 5 times, keep the y. And it goes into 18 9 times, keep the z. So our final solution is 2 times 3x minus 5y plus 9z.